My name is Lena Parker. I'm 28 years old, and just 2 weeks ago, I married the love of my life, Ethan Miller. For the first time in years, I felt like my life was finally my own. Ethan and I had been planning our honeymoon for months, dreaming of a quiet cabin in the Smoky Mountains where we could unplug, breathe, and just be us. But last night, everything came crashing down. It was almost midnight when my phone buzzed with a group message from my parents. My mom, Carol Parker, had written, "Family reunion scheduled for next week. Attendance is expected. No excuses." My heart sank. Next week was supposed to be my honeymoon. Within minutes, my dad, Robert Parker, chimed in, "Lena, this is important. Everyone will be there. Don't let us down." I stared at my phone, stunned. For as long as I can remember, my parents have had a way of making their plans feel like commands, like I had no say in my own life. Ethan noticed my face pale and gently took my phone. After reading the messages, he looked at me with disbelief. They know this is our honeymoon week. Why would they do this? I didn't have an answer. All I felt was that familiar, crushing weight, the one I've carried my whole life, of being expected to put my family first, no matter the cost. And for the first time, a quiet voice inside me whispered, "Maybe this time, you don't have to." Growing up, being a Parker meant one thing: family first no matter what. My mom, Carol, ran our house like a general. She believed in appearances, in being the perfect family everyone admired at church and neighborhood barbecues. But behind closed doors, she was intense. If I ever said I wanted to skip a family dinner to go to a school dance, she'd say, "Lena, don't be selfish. Family comes before fun." If I cried about it, she'd roll her eyes and tell me to stop being dramatic. My dad, Robert, was quieter, but that didn't mean he was on my side. He'd just sit in his recliner, let Mom have the last word, and say, "Your mom's right, kiddo. Don't make a big deal out of nothing." Then there was my older brother, Nathan, the golden child. Straight A's, captain of the football team, always praised for being responsible and loyal. Anytime he so much as showed up to family events, Mom would beam with pride. Me? I could bake an entire Thanksgiving dinner by myself and still get criticized because the rolls weren't warm enough. I learned early on that keeping the peace was my job. If Nathan forgot to take out the trash, Mom yelled at me for not reminding him. If Dad was in a bad mood, I was the one told to stay quiet and not start anything. By the time I was a teenager, I had mastered the art of disappearing, blending in just enough to not make waves, but doing everything possible to keep everyone happy. The first time I tried to stand up for myself, refusing to miss my best friend's graduation trip for a last-minute family barbecue, Mom didn't speak to me for a week. She called me ungrateful. Dad said I was too sensitive. And even though I told myself I wouldn't let it hurt me, it did. Every single time. So when my parents sent that group text about the reunion, it wasn't just about a schedule conflict. It was a trigger, a reminder that in their world, my happiness had never been the priority. As I grew older, my life started revolving around one goal: keeping the family happy, no matter the cost. When I got my first job as a graphic designer, I saved up for months to take a solo trip to California. The day I booked my ticket, Mom called saying, "Your dad's company picnic is the same weekend. We need you there." I canceled the trip. No one thanked me. When Ethan and I first got engaged, I suggested a summer wedding. Mom immediately said, "That's not a good time. Nathan's kids have soccer tournaments all season. You'll have to work around that." So we pushed the date 6 months later. Again, no thank you. Even our wedding planning became a battlefield. Mom had opinions on everything: the flowers, the menu, even the music. When I gently reminded her it was our day, she said, "You're being selfish. This wedding is about the family coming together, not just you two." I should have seen it coming with the honeymoon. Ethan and I had been planning this trip since before the wedding. We picked a cabin tucked in the mountains, no cell service, just us. Every time I mentioned it to my parents, Mom would give this little sigh, like I was being frivolous. "You really don't need to waste money on a trip right now," she'd say. "You could spend that week helping Nathan and his wife with their kids. They could use the support." I laughed it off, but deep down I felt it, that familiar pressure building again. Ethan noticed too. One night, as we packed, he wrapped his arms around me and said, "I have this weird feeling they're going to try something. Promise me you won't let them ruin this for us." I promised him I wouldn't. But now here I was, staring at that group text, my chest tight. It wasn't just a reunion, it was a test. Mom knew it. Dad knew it. They wanted to see if I'd bend one more time. And a part of me hated that I was even hesitating. The next morning I called my mom. My hands were shaking as the line rang. She picked up on the second ring. "Lena, glad you called. I hope you and Ethan have already rearranged your little trip," she said casually, as if she was asking me to pick up milk from the store. "Mom," I started slowly. "This is our honeymoon. We've had it planned for months. Can't the reunion wait?" There was a pause, then the sharp inhale I'd heard my whole life. "You're a married woman now. That means you have more responsibility, not less. Everyone's coming. Your cousins are flying in. It would look terrible if you just didn't show up." Her words stung, but I pushed back. "I'm not canceling my honeymoon because it's inconvenient for you." Dad's voice joined the call on speaker. "Lena, don't make a scene. Family is more important than a vacation. Ethan should understand that too." Ethan, sitting across from me, could hear every word. He mouthed, "Hang up." But I couldn't, not yet. "You've asked me to put this family first my whole life," my voice cracked. "And I have. Every single time. But this," I swallowed hard. "This is the first thing I've done just for me. For us. And I'm not giving it up." Silence. Then Mom said it, the one sentence that burned through me like acid. "You've changed, Lena. You sound selfish." Maybe Ethan's been a bad influence. That was it. I hit end call, without saying goodbye. The phone felt heavy in my hand, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. Ethan reached over, took my hand, and said softly, "Good. Now, let's pack." And I knew this was the moment I finally chose myself. The morning after that call, Ethan and I packed our suitcases in silence. It wasn't an angry silence. It was a heavy, thoughtful one. For years, every choice I made had been shaped by how my parents would react. But as I zipped up my last bag, I realized they couldn't stop me this time. We drove through winding mountain roads until the world felt far away. When we finally reached the cabin, there was no cell service, just towering trees, cool mountain air, and the sound of rushing water nearby. For the first time in my adult life, I felt free. The first night, Ethan and I sat by the fire, drinking hot cocoa. I kept replaying my mom's words in my head. "You sound selfish." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was being selfish. But for once, it didn't feel like a bad thing. Halfway through the trip, something in me clicked. I opened my laptop, blocked my parents' numbers on my phone, and drafted a short email. "I love you both, but I am no longer willing to rearrange my life to meet your expectations. When you're ready to respect my boundaries, we can talk. Until then, I need space." I didn't wait for a reply. The next morning, Ethan and I hiked up to a lookout point where the mountain stretched as far as I could see. I stood there breathing in the crisp air, feeling lighter than I had in years. It wasn't just a honeymoon anymore, it was a reset. When we returned home, I made more changes. I stopped checking the family group chat. I stopped running errands for Nathan when he called last minute. I started putting my energy into things that mattered to me, my work, my friends, my marriage. Ethan noticed the difference too. One evening, as we cooked dinner together, he smiled and said, "You seem happy. Like, really happy." And he was right. It wasn't easy. Some nights I still cried. Some days I still felt guilty. But I knew I had crossed a line I could never uncross. For the first time, I was building a life that was mine. It didn't take long for the storm to hit. 2 days after we got home from a honeymoon, my inbox was full, 3 long emails from Mom, 1 from Dad, and a dozen missed calls from Nathan. Mom's first email was classic Carol Parker. "You embarrassed us. Everyone was asking where you were. Do you have any idea how that made us look?" The second one was worse. "If you don't come by this weekend to apologize, Don't bother coming for Thanksgiving. For a second, the guilt rose up in my chest like it always had. But then I remembered standing on that mountaintop, breathing free air for the first time. I closed my laptop. A few days later, Nathan called. "Mom's really upset," he said, his voice low. "Dad hasn't been sleeping. Can't you just come by and smooth things over?" I took a deep breath. "Nathan, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not apologizing for taking my own honeymoon." There was a long pause. "You've changed," he said finally. "You used to care about this family." "I still care," I said softly. "But I'm done destroying myself to prove it." That weekend, Mom tried one last card. She texted me that she wasn't feeling well and could use her daughter. Ethan saw the message before I did. He looked at me and said gently, "If it's serious, we'll go. But if this is just another game." I knew it was a game. Mom had used this trick before, and every time, I'd come running.
So I didn't reply.
That night, sitting on the couch next to Ethan, I felt something I'd never felt before after ignoring my parents.
Peace.
It's been 6 months since that reunion. I haven't spoken to my parents much since then, and honestly, I think that's what saved me. At first, the silence felt heavy. I kept expecting the phone to ring, expecting to cave and go back to the way things were. But the longer I held my ground, the lighter I felt. I started therapy. I picked up hobbies I'd always put off: painting, hiking, even joining a book club. Ethan and I are closer than ever. Our tiny apartment feels like a sanctuary now, not just a place I sleep in between obligations. Sometimes, when I think about my parents, I still feel a sting of sadness. I wish they could be happy for me without trying to control me. I wish they could see that my choices don't mean I love them any less. They just mean I finally love myself too. But here's what I've learned. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. For so long, I thought being a good daughter meant saying yes to everything, putting my needs last, and proving my loyalty over and over. But all that did was teach my parents that they could take more and more without ever giving back. Now, when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel dread at the thought of disappointing someone. I feel free to build a future with Ethan, a future where our happiness matters most. Family is proven by love, not just blood. And sometimes, loving yourself enough to walk away is the bravest thing you'll ever do. As I sit here tonight, watching the sunset from our balcony, I smile. For the first time, my life feels like mine, and I'm never giving that up again.